Hi, I'm Katie, and this is the Free Art and Design School podcast, web series, whatever. I have one of my favorite people of all time here to talk to after trying to make this interview happen for so long. Would you like to
Sure.
introduce yourself?
Um, yeah, hi. I'm Ayden Lamb. I'm the fiber artist and animator. I live in LA and also Canada. And Katie's one of my favorite people too. So.
Nice. I think it's so interesting that you introduce yourself as a fiber artist first and an animator second. I'm really curious, sort of, you've had this very long and winding academic journey and personal journey in art, and I was wondering if you could talk about how you became an artist.
Yeah, so I, as a kid, I always really liked writing. I read a bunch. I was one of those like nerdy fantasy kids. And I spent a really, really long time thinking I wanted to write. I went to this kind of insufferable theater high school and I did some theater there. And then in my undergraduate, well, I moved to Seattle and I was like, I'm going to be a journalist. And then I took journalism for 2 years and then I dumped that. I was very fickle. Um, and then I went to an undergraduate in film production, and then I spent 4 years working in film production, and now I'm going to CalArts for animation. So sorry,
Crazy.
that's like a resume. I don't know. I
Well,
also
that's
worked at Blockbuster.
oh my God, I should interview you about that. Well, that's actually, this is one of the reasons that I really wanted to interview you and interview you early is that you have such interesting, diverse opinions on art and art education and non-art education. And you've sort of been through so many different kinds of learning, and you taught yourself animation sort of from scratch and then ended up in an animation MFA program, which is kind of unthinkable. What led you to animation specifically?
Ooh, that's such a good question. Really, COVID was great. COVID was bad in all other ways, but it was great for that because most of the work that I was doing in film was on set with other people, and suddenly there were no sets, there was no film work. I've done some freelance editing, there was nothing being filmed to edit, and I knew I still wanted to keep making films, and I had always really liked animation. I'd never thought of it as something I was going to pursue, but over the course of the first few months of COVID, I just ended up playing around with it a bit. And the funniest thing happened, which is that my whole time in live action film, I was having all these ideas that I was like, these are just like, they don't get made. It's like these films don't get made and I don't know why. And like, they feel like so impossible and crazy and new. And then I realized they were just animation ideas. And that felt really good. It was like a bit of an ego check, but it also felt really good. And suddenly I could make all these things that I'd been excited about for years, but had never known how to make in live action. And it just really pulled me in. And also I do a lot of fiber art, craft art, and it was really exciting to be able to put those together.
Yeah, so you are a stop motion animator amongst many other things. Could you talk about like what some of those ideas were that you were interested in about films that were like non-live actiony and like what was unique about them that led you to animation?
Yeah, absolutely. So in undergrad, I made a film that had some creatures in it that I described as angels, and I had no idea how I was gonna make them on film. And like I actually my friend from undergrad, Shay Chesky, who's an animator in the Vancouver area, did the um did the director of photography on that, or he was the director of photography on it. And um him and I ended up talking a lot about rotoscoping and like potentially rotoscoping the creatures in. And that was the very first time I realized like maybe there's something going on here. But I like had all these ideas where I wanted things to be set in different worlds with like creatures and stuff. Like I was interested in people, but I was also interested in this meshing of reality and fantasy that I think you could get pretty handily in like big budget movies in the 80s, like Labyrinth and Legend and stuff. But I don't think that exists anymore in live action. And I think the ability to explore stuff like that, like you've seen a lot of my stuff is like puppet focus.
Yeah.
I think that was like mainly the thing, was that I could make and animate both in the traditional sense, but also in like the bring to life sense. These creatures, that was, there was no going back. It was too good.
There's no going back.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really wonderful thing about animation is like you talked about, we are constantly inundated with things that are animated, but not that we consider animation. Like
Mm-hmm.
most Marvel movies are 95% visual effects. And I think what's sad is that good visual effects, like you said, aren't available to film students. And so if you really have to and want to do everything on your own, like you're basically an animator and you're the sound person and you're, you know, the writer, director, creator, like animators do everything film people do with an extra layer of like added kind of everything.
Right.
And I think it's really admirable that you A, have all of these skills, and B, have like continued to stick it out doing like such
You.
crazy shit. And I imagine most of it comes from like a deep passion and love, otherwise no one would ever do it. And could you like talk a little about the emotional side of that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was so unbelievably exciting. The first couple months I was animating, it was just really frustrating because the learning curve was really steep and I was teaching myself and there were a lot of online resources, but there weren't any in-person resources because of COVID and all that stuff. So the first few months it was like really frustrating, but I had this little seed of an inkling that it was going to be worth it. And it's hard for me to pinpoint the moment, but at some point I just I think maybe it was the first time I made a really big puppet. I don't know if you remember this puppet. It's kind of like a meat skull. It's like a coyote skull with like some meat on
Yeah.
it. But I'm normal. But it was I was like building it and I built it quite large, like way larger than I would do a puppet now. It was like no, it was like 3 feet by probably a foot and a half. But after I'd done like all this terrible felting and I was like sitting in my basement and I'm like moving the head to kind of animate it, and I'd realized that I'd combined working with clay, with painting, with fiber art, with filmmaking, and then I got to do some compositing, which I used to love very much, and now I'm done with forever. But as soon as I realized that I'd put all of those together, it was so intense and it was so emotional that like because I really, really like I love working with other people, but I also love just like making stuff on my own. And this idea of making just kind of like a little jewel box diorama that I had made every part of was just so exciting. It was amazing. Best feeling, best art feeling ever.
Mm, I wish I related more. I wish I did more things where I felt proud of them. I think it's very hard to get to that point.
I do too. And I'm still kind of chasing that dragon because I'm struggling with doing that right now, which I think is really normal.
Yeah,
But
super
yeah.
normal. You're in between your first and second years at Cal
Mhm.
Arts. It is the worst period of time because you have just, from personal experience, you go through like all this heavy critique and you've made all this stuff, and then you're like, oh God, I want to make more, but I need like an emotional break.
Yes,
And you get to go back to school in a week. So are you looking
exactly.
forward to it? Not looking forward to it?
Definitely a bit of both. I'm really excited to get back to classes. There's some things being offered this year that are cool. Obviously there's a lot of people at the school that I really love, and it's going to be nice to have the film library resource. And I'm TAing for Mark Toscano, a friend of the show. Um, but there's a lot of stuff I'm excited about. But then also it's been so nice to um experimental animation in LA is like it feels like right now like 50 to 100 people and they're all really really great people, but it does kind of feel like uh the way I'm into it with like the intensity of the first year of grad school, it feels so insular and like very tunnel vision right now. And it was really nice to just have a couple months where that opened up and I realized there was life outside of animation and that community is amazing as it is, and like just get that decompression time. But yeah, I'm excited and I'm not excited, but I'm mostly excited.
Good. That's how you should be. Although there isn't life outside animation. Don't
I
don't
know.
forget
Yeah.
that.
It's a nice illusion for a second, but
Oh my God. Yeah, I maybe you could talk more about this. But experimental animation, I think CalArts is the only MFA program in America that does EA. Maybe I'm wrong. Is that wrong? Or one of
I
them?
I think that's wrong, but it's one of a few. It's my dark secret that I only applied to CalArts. So,
Oh my
and the
God.
other
You're not even the first
did.
person who said that on this podcast. Isn't
I
that
know. I know.
horrible? That's crazy.
Uh,
But you
Literally
also
first
did
week of
your
school.
research.
I
So
did. I really, really, really looked into it. But first week of school, a bunch of us talked, and a bunch of us had only applied for CalArts, and we'd applied like very lightheartedly, like this will never happen.
yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
crazy. Okay. Well, backtracking on my falsehoods. So
yeah.
CalArts might not be the only EA MFA, but what made you think that you needed to get an MFA or wanted to pursue academic institutionalized learning of animation, rather than just continuing to teach yourself some
Yeah.
stuff? Also, answer this while I get my charger because I was not prepared.
No,
Uh,
no, go for it. I will. Yeah, so I'm kind of having, this is like I've talked to you on the phone about this. I'm having grad school collywobbles right now, which I think is really normal, where I'm like, uh-oh, why did I do that? Um, but I absolutely knew 100% that I wanted to have at least a period of time where I was learning animation from other people and just
Yeah.
have like a structure within which to make a consistent amount of work with a consistent group of peers. um I really wanted that structure, and I definitely don't regret having gotten that this year and seeking it out for the rest of my degree. Also, I don't know how I feel about this. I've always been a bit on the fence. I do really like the idea of teaching, and I think that one of the better ways to get into that is through an MFA. As unfortunate and flawed as I do think that is, I think it's
Yeah.
kind of the rules of the game at this point. Um, yeah, and I just like I was animating alone in my bedroom in my childhood home in like northern Alberta, and I just wanted to be part of a community. And
Yeah.
like it has been like that's been the most amazing part about being in LA and being with people is that like there are so many people who do what you do and love what you do, and it seemed like the right place to go, and I think it was for that.
No,
And can
absolutely. And you'll be a great teacher. I have absolutely no doubt about that. You've already taught me so much and you're not even a professor yet. Um, yeah, I think uh I mean, this is such a hill that I want to die on is like you're right that like unfortunately really expensive, nice niche art grad schools are one of the best ways to meet people. So is going to parties and just making friends, but like there doesn't seem to be a better way to like even get a job than to have like a friend in the industry. And I think that's one of the things I'm trying to challenge with doing the free art and design school is like I want there to be a decentralized network where like you don't have to be in a physical place like Los Angeles because a lot of people can't make it
Mhm.
out here or
Yes.
make it out here and fail because it it's hard, it's expensive. I was lucky enough to be born here, so um there is no place better for me to fail than in my own home. As you were saying, this is my literal childhood bedroom. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Mine too, actually. That's funny.
oh my God. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm so glad that you've found community and that you found me and vice versa, because I feel like I've
Yeah.
learned a lot from you. Do you think your CalArts experience has been pretty different from the other schools you've attended in terms of like culture and curriculum?
Yes, hugely. The undergraduate I did was at a community college. The undergraduate, the associates I did was at a community college. It was pretty relaxed. It was very self-directed, which I liked. It was like a lot of older students, and I was like a little baby. That was good for me. And then my undergraduate was very, very technical based. Like it was essentially like a trade school with a liberal arts aspect because it was film production. And that was how they approached it there. Like I know that that's not what the CalArts Film School is like. But yeah, no, one thing I've really loved about CalArts is it's studio based, it's critique based. I'm not a pamphlet for the school. You can find a lot of pamphlets for the school online, and I'm not doing that right now. Um, I think the last Zoom interview I did was for CalArts, so maybe I'm in that mindset. But I really like how this can be pretty brutal, but you and I have talked about this so much. I like how with CalArts you get out what you put in pretty much exactly. Like you can slack off and make it through CalArts and I don't know what you get out of it, or you can like work hard, in some cases way too hard, which I'm working on next year. I'm going to work on, but like and actually have like this really crazy multifaceted experience that I don't think is available to a lot of schools, like
Yeah. I
because it's so open. Yeah.
I want to push back. That's my least favorite
No,
thing
no,
with CalArts is like
I
that they
understand.
advertise that
Yeah.
and that it forces the students to have to fight for
Yeah.
resources often which are lacking. And I think the sentiment of what you said, I agree with that. Like it is very important to like put your all into your work. And I think you're a perfect example of that. If you want to talk about that more.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to say that like I do agree with you that the lack of resources is disgraceful.
Yeah.
I'm on the same page with you on that, and extremely frustrating. The animation building, I saw one of the incoming students who said the animation building, which first of all is very optimistic, the animation room is still closed when she was
Yeah.
there last week. So I'm like, cool. Anyway, I'm not gonna
You want to
not
provide context on that, on the
Oh
flood?
yeah, so there was a flood 2.5 years ago, question mark, that took out the animation wing of CalArts, and it has not yet been rectified. I
Yeah.
have never seen it. The students who came in the year before me have never seen it. The students who came in the year before that, who are graduating this year, saw it for less than 6 months. Like it's bad.
And what's the main pull of CalArts? I forget. What's the main department that everyone to
Oh,
CalArts for?
what animation? No, it's character animation, Katie. But I mean, they got fucked over too. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, the lack of resources is shameful, and I really don't like. I really don't like there's kind of like like it forces the students to compete in a way that I think is like definitely not great. The thing that I like is like what we were talking about briefly there, like the sentiment that if you put in more, you will get out more. I like that because
Yeah.
like I feel it kind of allows some agency, but it does also force like this very, as I said, tunnel vision work mindset, which
Yeah.
is frustrating. And yeah, there aren't enough resources. Stupid.
Right. And like,
Sorry.
yeah. But also as a disclaimer, like the two of us love this school and
Yes,
we don't
so
want to
much.
CalArts and like
No.
at all. But it
And
is,
not just as like a legal thing. Like we both genuinely really like CalArts.
and I think it's very clear that like you and I are both very devoted to not only like the CalArts community, but also just like maintaining a community of artists. And like you have
Yes.
been so present in every single class, like you go over and beyond. You've been TA for multiple people all the time, constantly running around with your head cut off. And I created this as a kind of not love note, but like a kind of addendum to my CalArts experience, which is like I want to be able to take the things that I've learned and been, lucky enough to learn and then pay them forward to people to give resources and access to a wider
Yes.
population. Not just I don't want to like, illegally record my CalArts videos and put them online, but
Yeah.
like there needs to be more done by already existing institutions and individuals to like
Yes.
share that. Um, what are some of the ways in which you think community engagement or being surrounded by so many artists has influenced your practice in positive ways?
Oh, it's been so amazing. It's been insane. And like I will go into pamphlet mode here. I'm like not afraid to do that. Like we were just talking very briefly about Mark, but like sitting in his class and having the unparalleled access to experimental animation that he has because of his network. Like that is, even though we're paying to be there, that is democratization of information,
Yeah.
and like the screenings that are available that you find out through even just like following fellow students and profs on Instagram, like it's just like this huge like network is such a pat word, but it feels like a giant spider web. And that's so exciting because there's so much cross contamination and learning. And that's really been it. It's been talking to other people. It's been watching hundreds and hundreds of films I would never have seen otherwise. And it's been being forced to really think about them and integrate them into my own practice and having a schedule. Like it's really just, I think that the key, like the question was essentially, how has this influenced my practice, right? Like, so I think I'm still on the road to figuring that out because when I was practicing alone in my room, it was the big tunnel vision. And then when I was in grad school, it's a way wider tunnel, but it's still like this like very focused whatever. And I think what I am going for and how I hope it will eventually influence my practice is kind of an opening up of that. So I'm like working in the real world and able to live and integrate my art into my life in a way that I would not have been able to do if I were relying solely on myself
Yeah.
to generate work and to teach myself and that stuff. So I just hope I can be in a tunnel that is wide enough that it eventually feels like a planet. And that's it.
Well, that's your job. It's as someone who embodies art is like you go out into the world and then you share that with other people.
Right.
I just interviewed Lisa and Lisa had this wonderful quote that was like her role is one of her roles as a teacher is to like show students things they would have never seen before and then give them the resources to find things they would have never seen before. Because EA is like the shit that's so good is like so niche, is from like Soviet Russia. It's
Yes.
like, you'll never find it. It's in its grungiest version on YouTube. There's
There's
no
like two
other
VHS copies, but Mark has one. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And it's like I am so lucky to like interact with people like you and other people who've completely devoted their entire lives
Yeah.
to furthering these really niche fields that need to be preserved, basically.
Thank you. Same to you. Yeah.
Um, what are you struggling with?
Ooh, what am I not struggling? No. But yeah, what I'm struggling with right now is the what I'm struggling with right now is I feel like I'm on such a tear with this, but like having that really directed vision and then having this directed vision within a community and then finding out a way to make art that allows me to also live a life that I like.
Yeah.
Like A, the financial aspect is really important and that's stressful, of course, but B, the idea of making art as something you love to do and contributes to your sense of self and your self-worth, but is not the entire scope of your self-worth, which is hard because another thing I think CalArts encourages, whether or not it's on purpose and for better or for worse, is like your art is you. And if you excel at that, then everything's great. And if you struggle with that, then it's like, you know,
Yeah.
it's, I'm having this really interesting time reconciling making art passionately and all the time and loving it, and also having a life that I care about and can appreciate, even if I'm not animating at all. Like, I would love to be able to live a life where I never want this to happen, but if I had to stop making art forever, I would love to still have a happy life.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm finding that really hard because I find that if I flip to one, I abandon the other. And so finding that balance has been really tough for me, and I'm going to keep working on it this year.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really appreciate from your viewpoint is like, I don't know, art when you're one of the people who really is not coasting through grad school and you are literally like, this is my life, this is the thing that I'm passionate about, my politics are involved in this, my livelihood is involved with this. It's so consuming and often in really beautiful ways. Like I'm thinking of the like piece you made for one of the end of the year shows, like the sculptural God, what was it? You did a sculpture with a
Oh,
Pepper's ghost inside.
yes, thank you.
And it's like so many multifaceted, no art jargon, but like you use so many different tools and practices to make such a like beautiful little thing. And you can see that like even in your spare time you make work like that and it's really beautiful. How how do you think what's like a successful path towards being able to sort of separate yourself from the negative aspect of work and burnout and like the system?
Yeah. This is a funny one. Because I've thought about this a lot in terms of making myself make work this summer, which I haven't done too much of, but I've done some I'm happy with. I think for me, a lot of the trick of it is I'm a big ponderer. I like being in my head. I like thinking about things. I like reading. I'm very curious. It's like my favorite trait about myself, and also my fatal flaw is that I always want to know more and think more and, you know, all that stuff. But for me, the trick for art is it has to be something I do with my hands. Like
Mm,
that is where, like, when I am knitting and crocheting and sewing and doing stuff with clay and all that stuff, I'm not intellectualizing it. And I think that that is how I get the healthy separation I need to think of art as something I love doing or art as a job or something like that, as opposed to like getting in this really, really huge tangle in my head about art as life or art as, you know, which of course, like, art is life in many ways, but not in a practical way that allows me to be happy.
yeah,
And so for me, I think it's going to be me figuring out some kind of job I can do that I don't hate,
yeah,
whether that's in arts admin, whether it's in teaching, you know, anything like that. And then in the spare time, as much as I can, uh, reading theory and thinking and writing and brainstorming and all that stuff, and also making art with my hands and letting those coincide where they can, but not like striving constantly for this perfect merger. I think that's what's fucking me over, if I can swear on your podcast.
you're allowed to swear. It's not a real school. This is my school.
This is the
Our
realist
school.
school. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the trouble is historically you look at artists, photographers, writers, all these people
Mm.
from you have an idealized for I do at least from the 40s and 50s of
Yeah.
these beats who are, you know, living on the ground and their work is so beautiful and that's their life and they had struggles but they made it through and like there's this such romanticized vision of what it is to be an artist and be only an artist.
Yes.
And
Yes.
like you can't realistically, it's almost impossible to do that now unless
Mhm.
you're like a social media star,
Mhm.
or already wealthy or have
Yeah.
some in your industry or whatever.
Yep.
Um, which, like you said, brings in all these practical considerations that we almost never talk about in grad school about how to get a job, how to license your work, how to like you know, become a human in the real world and also an artist. Are you,
Yes.
aside from the real world things, is there something that you do or think about that helps you like escape into your work? Because your work is very fantastic, both literally and like metaphorically.
Yeah, I think probably this feels like an answer that a lot of people would give, but that's okay. I think it's still a good one. I feel like there's this kind of place, if you let yourself relax into the work enough, where, you know, a lot of people call it like flow state or whatever, but where you can just really feel what you're making. And there's just this like such a deep connection to it. Whereas sometimes, and I don't think this is wrong, when you're like practicing art daily, you're just getting it out there. And that's great. But there's this really exciting moment where you just get stuck up in it. And like, I'm not one of those people who's like, yeah, I can work for 14 hours a day, but you know, I can do like 6 or 8 hours a day and feel really good about it. And then go out and I can see things that inspire me in my work in the world. And like, I can see things in my work that help me live better when I'm not making my work. And that is the moment that is most important to me, is when I feel like, this is a funny thing, but my favorite thing ever since I was little have been like miniatures and dioramas and stuff like that. And I think it's just the idea of this world that is part of our world, but is also completely different and self-contained. And I think I was talking about like jewel boxes earlier and stuff like that. And that is what I strive for in my work, is this kind of like permeable membrane where each thing makes me more excited about the other.
Mm.
I feel like I've said the same thing 10 times in different ways in this interview, but
No, I mean, if
maybe
you
I'm just
have,
very
that's my
passionate.
fault for
No,
asking
oh
bad
my God,
questions.
no, you're nailing the questions actually.
Yeah. No, you've really, it explains a lot about your work also. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your work for people who
Sure.
haven't seen it.
Yeah, happily. Um, so I make stop motion animations, but I do also make like a lot of fiber art. Like I make a lot of puppets and stuff that I don't animate, puppets for live action. And like Katie, like you were saying, like miniature models. And I'm getting more and more excited about this is thank you to Zach Dorn and Melissa Ferrari. I taught or I TA'd for them last term, and they did kind of like a this is a very reductive, but like a pre-animation animation techniques class that's so insane. I hope neither of them ever watch this because that's not the way to describe it. But I'm really excited about like ways that animation and filmmaking have shown up that like aren't on screens. I
Yes.
think that's like awesome, and that's something I'm exploring more in my work. But no, basically I make like weird gooey, kind of gross, some may say dark and unsettling animations. I like doing stop motion. I like puppets. I like incorporating live action. Yeah. Um, and I also just make a lot of blankets, sweaters, what have you. I like also just doing like kind of by the book knitting and crochet as well.
Amazing. And your work, as diverse as it is very stylized, like not stylized, but like I
Mhm.
can always tell when something is a piece that you've done, which I think is incredible given that you haven't been animating that long. Um, and I think that's like a testament to both the fact that you're a stop motion animator and it's a small-ish, niche-ish field, not within animation, but within the larger scope of cinema. But also just that like the images and textures that you choose are very intentional, and like you have a palette that you work with that's very identifiable, and I think that's a strong suit and also something that's like very hard to figure out, especially when you're younger. Do you think doing any like of the live action work you did or journalism or writing or like your poetry or like anything, I don't even know if you write poetry. I just sort of assume you do. Um, like, do you think that's influenced your work and like it was helpful to like go through all of those kind of stages to get where you are now? Or do you think it would have been better if you like at age 20 went to Cal Arts if you could do it
Oh my
over?
gosh, no. I'm so glad I didn't do that. Like holy shit. Yeah. No, there's some yeah. I have seen some like there's people in my cohort who I love so much, and they are 22 in grad school. And they're nailing it. they're killing it. That would not have been me. I would have been miserable and confused and really upset. And I would have done the degree and blown the however much money and then not been any further. That's just I
Yeah.
wasn't at that place. Yeah, like there's been so much in my life that has shaped my work. Actually, the funniest thing, my friend texted me the other day because I texted him a photo of Merlin, my dog, who you love, I know, and I do too. But I texted him a photo of Merlin and he went, "You are a master of texture." And like it's just so funny because like in all of my work, I think that's the thing. I think it's the textures. And like I'm just a very tactile person. And I think for me, it was really important to get time and experience and just like a lot of time looking at stuff. I think because of
Yeah.
the nature of my work. And I do like I thank you so much for saying that. I do think I have visually distinct work, which is really exciting to me because I didn't know I had
Yeah.
that. But I think that absolutely that is because I spent so long figuring stuff out and I didn't do a graduate degree before I felt I understood what I was about in some
Yeah.
way. So yeah, that was the perfect choice for me, not for everyone, but I
Yeah.
would recommend it if
Because
you're
I
walking.
I did graphic design MFA stuff before being a graphic designer and after like not having sorry, none of that was explained well. I didn't have a graphic design background. I
Yeah.
didn't know anything. I came into grad school, I got like my ass whooped for like at least a year and a half, and now I'm like maybe slightly better at being a graphic designer than I used to be. And now it's my profession, as well as doing stuff like this. And I think I'm very lucky to have like my previous experiences, but I also sort of wish I'd done what you did and like spent a year or two learning before I was like thrown into the environment. Like what how did you learn to self teach, if that makes sense? Like were you just
Yeah,
like I want to do this thing, I'm gonna Google how to do it, or is it like something else?
totally. Yeah, so I said earlier I'm like insanely curious. I will if I see something, if I see one thing offhand, I will do like a 6 hour Wikipedia like Wayback Machine GeoCities deep dive on it. Like I want to know everything. And I think that that was an instinct that really helped me. But I think the biggest thing, and like this is, for better or for worse, ideally for better, this is a opportunity we will not have again. It was COVID. Like it was
Yeah.
the very, very start of the pandemic. There was nothing. I was just alone in my room, and like I having that much time and being that bored and that anxious, it was really, really good for me to have something to distract myself with. And especially something as that I found as and still find as pleasurable as curiosity. And
Yeah.
like being able to explore that was like a huge luxury.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if I would have done it if it weren't for that combination of ingredients. That
Mm.
the
God
self
created the pandemic so you could be an
for
animator.
me, for me. Um, but no, it was like the perfect combination of me being really freaked out and really bored, and also me really, really just loving to be nosy and find things out.
It's
That's
like my favorite meme during the pandemic was like during the last pandemic, Newton invented calculus and gravity, and you learned animation, and that
yeah,
was like your spur of the moment thing.
my gravity.
Your gravity. So we only have a little bit of time left. I was
Yeah.
wondering if you could give a little bit of advice to either your younger self, if you could talk to yourself from 10 years ago, or to someone starting out now as an animator and trying to figure out what the hell to do with their life.
Yeah, for sure. I would say if you are interested in animation, there's a huge proviso here, which is that I don't really do drawn animation, and animation is so different to me from what I do as to be like almost completely unparsable. Like I feel like I could do drawn animation like I could do like concert violin. It literally feels that different to me, and it is incredibly
Your
cool.
first year short had drawn animation in it.
A little bit, but
Oh
like
my
just
god.
yeah, no, I don't know, it's just like I love it, but it just feels so like Isabel Santos, she just did a music video that she posted on Instagram this morning, and she does like almost entirely hand-drawn pencil, and seeing it I was just like, this is so genius, like how did you, like it's just it doesn't make sense to me anyway in a positive way, but Yeah, no, but with that proviso, I will speak quickly. I think that you should cross-train and do as much as you can and have a lot of experiences outside of animation. I think that you should set aside a few hours a day to practice, but you should not do what all of those character animation application videos on YouTube tell you to do and like be like, I'm gonna do my sketchbook for 12 hours a day. Because if you are drawing from only other art from only other artists from only your, especially only in your field, like if all you're doing is watching animation and stuff, you are dooming yourself because you are becoming a Ouroboros. You're eating your own tail. There's nothing there. For me, the biggest thing is like have a life, go out, spend time with your friends, watch a bunch of movies, go for a bike ride. My favorite thing ever is to go out in nature and look at birds. I'm a bird nerd. Like you have to do stuff like that. Diversity of experience. That's it for me. That's like the biggest thing. And that's what I'm seeking. That's what I'm trying to find a better balance with.
That's why when we hung out and did Steven's homework in the
Yes,
woods, you know,
exactly. Yes, exactly that.
we
For
had an
context,
assignment
yeah,
where we had a whole class that where we met actually that was called location animation, and it got started I think for a similar reason as the flood. Like there was no access to like
yes,
resources
that is,
on
yeah.
campus.
Yep.
So Stephen was like, we're gonna have a class outdoors and like learn how to shoot with light and like whatever. And then our homework forced us to like actually go outside and like literally touch grass.
Literally touch grass. And it's so, I loved the work we made in that class.
Yeah.
I loved it. And that's what's so exciting to me. Like I don't want to sit over a multi-plane every day. That's just not how I want to do it. So
Really?
and that's why I'm stopping compositing, because I will never touch, you can't ever make me touch After Effects again. That's not true, but rarely will I ever touch it again, because I feel like
you're gonna
I
need it
know,
for
but
this film.
I know, but I feel like if you spend a third of your film in After Effects, or this is for me specifically, a lot of people are great with it, but if I spend over a third of my film production time in After Effects, I completely lose touch with what I wanted from the film and what I like about art. So that's another thing.
I feel that. As someone who spent way too much of her time doing After Effects for the last year for a degree.
Yeah.
No more.
You did great with it. But yeah, no, it's time to touch grass.
Yeah. So do you have any parting words of wisdom to yourself now going into your next but not last year? What do you hope to get out of this year?
I would really like to make more object-based work. An unnamed person complained to me once that too many people come out of CalArts not wanting to animate and only wanting to make other types of work, which I understand, because I think that you get so saturated in animation the first year that you're kind of like reflexively pulling away from it a bit, which is how I feel. What I want out of this year is to figure out again what made me so excited about making animation at the start of the pandemic, and also to make more work I can touch with my hands, and to make more work because I like having fun, not because I'm trying to prove something to myself or to others, because I came into my first year suddenly having to prove a lot to a lot of people when that had never been the case for me before in animation. And I want to find that balance again. That's it.
Really beautiful. It's been a pleasure interviewing you. I have so many things to ask you and so much to learn from you in the future, and I'm going to bully you into giving a lecture at some point on clay or stop motion or something.
Ooh, I'd love to. Yeah, same to you. Of course.
Nice. I'm not giving a lecture on clay or stop motion.
No, I know, but I want to ask
know.
you questions and also bully you. So
I'm the most bullyable person. I'm so happy to jump into things. I do think it's a little sad what you were talking about. Like when you come out of CalArts, you don't want to make the thing that you went into CalArts doing. Like for months, I was like, well, I guess maybe not. Now I'm more at peace with it. But like the thought of doing graphic design like every day as much as I did during grad school is like kind of soul crushing. So I really hope you never lose your spark for animation. Luckily, your work is so diverse that like if you don't want to composite, you can go crochet something. I think that's one of the beautiful things about your practice is like, because it's multifaceted, you can't possibly stop doing all of the things, right?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I can't and I won't. Yeah, I think I don't know, I've had this conversation so many times, but I think it's almost baked into grad school that you're going to spend some time being like, ew, gross, fuck, I don't want to touch it, which is like sad to me, but I don't know how we'd change it. I don't know. A full override. What you're doing maybe is the
I've solved everyone's problems. Well, thank you for being here, and I'll see you next week.